This is a high contrast image. This is a low contrast image. And this image has color contrast. But what the does that mean? And how do you use it? Not just in filmmaking and photography, but in paintings and drawings and all different types of visual arts. If you've ever wondered this, my friends, then you've come to the right place. How you handle contrast can have a huge impact on the look and feel of your work. When we talk about contrast in art, we're talking about differences, specifically the differences between tones and colors to make up an image. Let's go over different types of contrast and how you can use them to improve your images or get a more desired effect on your images. Let's start with tonal contrast. Tonal contrast refers to the difference in brightness in the elements of an image. You can create tonal contrast in black and white and color images alike. Unless you're specifically trying to go for a high or low contrast image, you're usually going to be working in this range. You can also call this medium contrast. This includes tones from the brightest brights to the darkest darks, from the most saturated colors to the least saturated colors, complementary colors, and everything in between. This is a medium contrast or tonal contrast picture that I've taken. Notice there are dark areas and there are light areas. There are highly saturated areas and there are lowly saturated areas. Having all of this combined makes medium contrast. Here's another medium contrast picture that I took in black and white. Notice it's not low contrast, so there's still a good amount of separation between the lights and the darks, but it's not high contrast either, so they're not battling it out for supremacy. This is what medium contrast is, a little bit of everything. This picture I took on film on a cloudy day, so it already has a very even tone to it without a lot of highlights and contrasts coming naturally. Now naturally, the most eye-catching version of contrast is high contrast. A high contrast image has really bright brights and really dark darks. And again, you can do it with both color and black and white. High contrast images are great for making your subject or whatever your focal point is stand out. It gives you very direct separation between the dark and the light. Check out this high contrast painting by Jessie Lane from 2016. It's called Echoes. You see how the very brightest part of her face is way brighter than the darkest part of the image. There's a clear separation between the two. That's a high contrast image. Similarly, look at this photo I took of my friend George. It's extremely high contrast. You can see where the darks are separated from the lights. High contrast is also used effectively in silhouettes. This is another photograph that I took, exposing for the sky rather than the subject, to have this beautiful dark silhouette against the colored background. Now this is it in motion. This is from my short film Dad. Notice how the brights are very, very bright and the darks are very dark. That's what high contrast is. Brights are bright, darks are dark. All of these images have very little medium tone. Now the opposite of a high contrast image is a low contrast image. Low contrast images have very little difference in the tonal values. So for instance, instead of whitest of whites and blackest of blacks, you'll see gray tones. In color images that are low in contrast, you'll see a lot of colors that are closer and more similar in tones, such as yellow and orange, or blue and green, or purple and red. Instead of images that pop, low contrast images have a dreamy feel instead of really bright highlights or really dark shadows. Like this painting here. This specifically uses different shades of the same color to create an image. It's monochromatic and it's beautiful. But check out this one. You can tell that there are light areas and you can tell there are shadowy areas. But neither overwhelm the other. It's low contrast, almost as if it's the exact same across the board. And look at this picture that I took. Everything is an even contrast and it gives you that sort of dreamy look that I was talking about. I use it again in my short film Cassidy. By making the images more hazy, it's more evenly toned. Now let's talk about color contrast. Color contrast uses just that, colors. It uses it in different tones and hues and chromas to create high contrast images based on color. Every color on the color wheel has a different tonal value based on black being the darkest and white being the lightest. So for instance, yellow would be considered a pretty bright color, whereas navy blue would be considered a pretty dark color. Now you can create more or less contrast by adding colors that are further apart or closer together on the color wheel. If you add colors that are further apart, that adds more contrast. If you add colors that are closer together, it's less contrast. I did a video on complementary colors. You can check it out here if you want to. But take a look at this painting. Orange and blue are on opposite ends of the color wheel, and you can see how these complementary colors are creating contrast and separation between the elements of the image. Another good example of split complementary color is Genie from Aladdin. The blue, the orange, and the red all are creating contrast at different parts of his body. Now, to wrap this up, let's talk about micro contrast. What is micro contrast? This one isn't very talked about. To put it simply, it's the differences between the tones in proximity to another. The little tiny pieces of contrast and tonal shifts throughout an image that give you detail. For instance, look here, look at these rocks. Look at the whites, look at the blacks, look at the grays, and all of the different tones in between. Micro contrast gives you tonal detail, and it makes an image feel more three-dimensional, and it gives it more texture. And it works with black and white and color as well. It lets you see more detail and brings the image to life. It makes you feel like you can reach out and just touch things. Contrast is so important, guys. If you're a painter, if you're a photographer, if you're a cinematographer, if you're any kind of visual artist, knowing contrast is crucial to really being able to step up your imagery. It helps you direct the eye more. It can bring your images to life. And you'll be able to create more beautiful images that you may have never even thought that you could. But then again, what do I know? Thanks again for watching, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Be sure to drop a comment down below. Let me know how you use contrast. Are these videos any good? Are they helping? Let me know. I'd like to have a conversation with you. You can check out some of my short films here. Follow me on social media and make sure you come back next time because I think you're pretty cool. Peace.